A 17-year-old boy steps outside his grandmother's house for a cigar. He never comes back inside. 9 days later, his dismembered body is found in a shallow grave, both arms and both legs removed, lye poured over the remains, concrete mixed on top, with damage to the head and spine. The medical examiner would call it one of the worst cases in the history of Virginia. But here's what should terrify you. He wasn't the first, and he wouldn't be the last. In a small Virginia town of less than 12,000 people, 6 young men are deceased or missing in just 3 years. 3 of them were cousins, an entire family line being erased. Bodies keep turning up in the same woods. Supposed self-deletes where the victims' pockets were rifled through and their phones disappeared. A missing man whose mother was told by police, "Your son is not alive," and 2 people in this county know what happened to him, before the officer vanished and never contacted her again. The family searched for answers while the bodies piled up. An SA offender whose house the victim's phone pinged at gets mysteriously scrubbed from the registry. 6 witnesses in an apartment where a man allegedly ended himself, but his hoodie turns up at someone else's house, washed completely clean. A young man running down Center Street with someone behind him fleeing into the woods where he's found deceased the next day. But the most chilling part? The person who found that dismembered teenager in the shallow grave was the local police chief at 3:30 in the morning in complete darkness outside of his jurisdiction on what he called a hunch. And the very next day after that gruesome discovery, another young man would be gone. The police chief? He resigned weeks later without explanation, but not before every single scenario he gave the victim's mother about her son's disappearance involved the same thing: going into the woods to die. Because everybody they find deceased in Lunenburg County, they find them in the woods. Welcome to Lunenburg County, Virginia, where for 8 hours every night, from midnight to 8 a.m., there are no police on duty, where young black men keep disappearing, and where someone knows exactly what's happening, but no one's talking. Hello, strangers. Welcome back to the Strange Bar and Grill. I'm your host, JP. Today we'll be discussing the Lunenburg 6, a series of deaths that span 3 years in a small town in Virginia. I'll be starting with the most brutal case that would eventually blow this whole thing wide open. But let's go ahead and jump right in. On November 2nd, 2022, 17-year-old Sion had just returned to his grandmother's house, and upon entering her home, he threw his jacket on a pile of his things left on the floor. This is something that bothered his grandmother, so she spoke to him about it, and an argument ensued. Words were exchanged, and each of them would end up going their separate ways, angry with each other. A few hours later, Sion found his grandmother sitting, watching TV, and apologized for the earlier argument. After making sure everything was good with his grandmother, Sion walked out the front door and into the yard to smoke a Black and Mild, because she didn't allow smoking in her house. Now, this was around 9 p.m. His grandmother assumed that he was going out to the tool shed where he and his best friend Brandon Lee would hang out, and that would be the last time that anyone admits to seeing him alive. Now, here's what you need to understand about Sion. He wasn't from Lunenburg originally. His mother had sent him to live with his grandmother in Lunenburg. Her reasons for this were that she felt Richmond was too dangerous, and she believed he would have a better quality life and education in Cambridge. Also, Sion had been implicated in a shooting in Henrico County, Virginia, but he was eventually completely cleared of any involvement. Even so, his mother worried and didn't want to take any chances, so Sion went off to Cambridge, about 1.5 hours southwest of Richmond. But with that background, let's get back to the story here. His grandmother, who was the last person to see him, goes to bed at around 1 a.m. She doesn't know if he's still outside. The next morning, she assumes he caught the school van early. She goes to work, she comes back home, no Sion. She calls the school, they haven't seen him, so she calls Sion's mother. Sion's mother waited until the second day he was missing, and then went straight to the police when he didn't return. She claims she knew something was wrong because he had left his grandmother's house without headphones, something he never does. He also left behind his ADD medication. Now, some quick background on the area. Cambridge is in Lunenburg County, which is known to be an extremely bad area for African American murders. And this goes back hundreds of years. They have that bad history, as you can imagine. But ultimately, what I'm trying to convey here is that the area is hostile to non-white citizens, basically. But even knowing all this history, his family had no choice but to go to the police. And as expected, the response was less than appropriate for a missing teenage boy. As the search was being conducted by both his family and the police, his mother remembered something. Even though Sion had his own phone, which was dead every time they attempted to call it, she had given him his older brother's old phone, an iPhone. She knew it didn't have a service provider, but she also knew that the Find My Phone app would work as long as it was in range of a Wi-Fi signal. So using the app, she was able to track Sion's iPhone to a house down the road from his grandmother's in Kinbridge. But this excitement turned to dread when they looked up the address online. It was the home of a Tier 3 SA offender, the worst level offender. Wasting no time, the family went to his house and spoke with the residents there who claimed they did not know Sion and have never seen him or ever spoke to him. They pleaded with police to search the residence, which they can do without a warrant for registered SA offenders. But Officer Barnes tells them the man isn't technically an SA offender. He claims it was just some misunderstanding with the girl in his car. So basically, this scumbag police knows this man apparently, because how does someone just end up on the SA offenders registry by accident? That's not possible. That doesn't happen. And Tier 3 nonetheless. The Kinbridge Police Department not only refused to check this SA offender's house, but they removed them from the property and told them to never return. So they did what they were told by police and continued their search. Knowing that in an area as rural as Kinbridge, the fact the iPhone pinged from an actual home was extremely concerning. To this day, the house and the property has never been searched, and no warrant has ever been issued. Police have stated this is due to a lack of evidence. It sounds like Officer Barnes is trying to cover up some stuff here. He's trying to protect this Tier 3 SA offender. But what do you think? Let me know in the comment section. So let me tell you about the search efforts, because this is where we meet a key player. On November 8th, Election Day, the family organizes a search party. As they're walking toward Poorhouse Road, they're stopped by Officer Ben Barnes, Chief of Kinbridge Police, driving a gray Dodge Charger. Sion's family member describes this encounter. Barnes says he's been looking for Sion all day, but when he invites them closer to his car, they notice something odd. There's brush, dirt, and leaves and debris on his lap. He brushes them off casually, but here's the thing. Sion's family, they've been walking all day, and they've been searching everywhere, and they didn't look like that. They didn't have all that debris and grass and leaves on them. So how does someone get covered in forest debris while they're sitting in a car? And we'll come back to that. Even stranger, a neighbor near the SA offender's house reports that her daughter heard someone screaming for help from the woods. She called police, but they never showed up. Maybe they never showed up because they knew what was happening. Maybe they were already there. November 11th, 2022, 9 days after Sion disappeared. At approximately 3:30 in the morning, in complete darkness, Police Chief Ben Barnes is driving around the 200 block of Seaway, which is outside his jurisdiction, by the way, and he just happens to find a shallow grave. Let me be very clear about what he found, because the details matter here. Sion Carroll, 17 years old, had been multiple times in the head and spine, but that wasn't enough for whoever did this, because they dismembered him, both arms, both legs removed. The body showed multiple chop wounds from the dismemberment attempt. Then they poured lye on him, and lye is a chemical that burns through organic material. Then they poured concrete mix on him, then buried him in a shallow grave. Special Agent George of the Virginia State Police would later say this was probably one of the worst homicides, not just in this county, but in the state of Virginia. Now back to Chief Barnes and his miraculous discovery. When asked how he found the body, Barnes initially said he just had a feeling, a hunch. Later he would change his story, claiming he received an anonymous tip that led him to the search area. But here's the problem. He says he searched it with other officers first and found nothing, then decided to go back alone at 3:30 a.m. in the dark outside his jurisdiction, and that's when he found the grave. So he didn't find the grave during the day with other officers searching the same area, but you find it at 3:30 in the morning by yourself, just randomly outside. Officer Barnes from the jump just sounds very suspicious. I feel like he's involved in some form of cover-up. The guy is bizarre. The medical examiner would determine Sion had been dead for several days when found. His body was in an advanced state of decomposition, complicated by the lye. But wait, there's more, because after Sion's body was found, the Tier 3 offender that Sion's phone pinged at and where the neighbor heard the cries for help was completely scrubbed from the registry, disappeared, gone. So the one major lead in Sion's case had now been removed from public view by someone in the courts or law enforcement. Even putting Sion's case aside, you would think that residents really deserve to know if their neighbor is a violent predator. So why would they scrub him from the registry? The Virginia State Police, who have taken over the investigation, were pressed by a reporter on the removal of the SA offender from the registry. After much back and forth, the state police said they would not comment, but that the removal of his name from the registry is something that is being focused on in the investigation. But still, somehow, someway, the Tier 3 SA offender's house where Sion's phone last pinged was removed from the public registry. And around the same time, something else strange occurred in Cambridge. Cambridge Chief of Police Ben Barnes had only been chief for 3 years as of 2022. Since joining the Cambridge PD in 2017, he was able to obtain the highest promotion possible for Cambridge police officers at a rather young age. On January 1st of 2023, only 6 weeks after Sion's body was discovered through Chief Barnes's amazing hunch, he retired. Yes, let me say that again. The chief of the Cambridge Police Department, who had only been on the job for 3 years, tendered his resignation effective January 1st of 2023. Now, I couldn't find a reason given for his retirement, but according to reports, it says that he was planning on retiring before this case. That just doesn't make sense. You're one of the youngest police chiefs ever. You only did the job for 3 years, and you decided to retire. All that just seems bizarre when you combine it with him having just this random hunch, this feeling, and finding a body. Then all of a sudden he retires. It's a little suspicious. Huge red flags with that guy. The Cambridge town manager, Tony Matthews, stated in an interview his resignation letter did not state the reason and we did not ask. Even more strange, 2 years after Sion's body was found, after being repeatedly pressured by a reporter on his hunch, the chief insisted that he received an anonymous tip about Sion's body, but didn't want to compromise the person offering the tip or the investigation. So he just claimed it was a hunch. But still, that doesn't explain why he would say it's a hunch to investigators. The investigators don't appear to even know about this anonymous tip. It sounds like he's just covering his butt after the fact. And here's perhaps the most damning detail about the investigation. Sion's grandmother, the last person to see him alive, was never interviewed by investigators. Not by Barnes, not by the state police who took over, not by Special Agent Kevin George. Never. She only learned that this wasn't normal when a documentary crew told her they were her first interview of any kind. Let that sink in. The last person to see Sion alive was never interviewed by police. Why? Maybe because they already knew what happened to him. Now, before we move from Sion's case, there's one more death we need to discuss because it happened the very next day after Sion's body was found. Brandon Lee was at the church on the corner of Center Street when Sion's family gathered. People say he and Sion were friends, and according to Sion's mother, when she spoke to Brandon, his body language was really off. She said, "I knew that he had known something. It was almost like he really wanted to tell me, but he didn't know how." Could Brandon be involved? Did he know something but feared for his life? The day after Sion's body was discovered, reports came in over the scanner. Someone was behind Brandon Lee. He was running down Center Street, then ran into the woods past his house. What happened next is officially listed as self-afflicted unaliving. That sounds shady, right? You're getting chased down the street. They find you deceased, but they claim it was self-inflicted. What are these cops hiding? Brandon allegedly left a note saying he was going into the woods to get sleep to protect his mom and dad. And what does that even mean? I have no clue what that means. And where is this note? But here's what doesn't add up. People who heard the scanner traffic say it sounded like someone was chasing him. The family doesn't believe he did that to himself, and the timing one day after his friend's mutilated body is found is beyond suspicious. Now, when I first read Sion and Brandon's case, I thought someone from Richmond was maybe coming back to get them. But the fact that police aren't really investigating the case and brushing the whole thing off, and Officer Barnes' behavior, something just seems really off and seems very suspicious, like they're protecting someone, like the police are involved in this somehow. But it gets worse and more suspicious, so stay with me and remember this detail for later. Chief Barnes, when theorizing about what happened to Sion, kept suggesting to the family that maybe Sion took his medication, his ADD medication, and went into the woods and committed a self-unaliving. And it's like every scenario Barnes gave the family involved the woods somehow. And guess what? Everybody they find dead in Lunenburg County, they find in the woods. But let's go back to January 15th of 2020, before Sion, before Brandon. Antonio Rich, 19 years old, Brandon Lee's cousin. His body was discovered by a Virginia Department of Transportation crew in a ditch along Moore's Ordinary Road in Kinbridge. He'd been shot 5 times, mostly in the torso. His right hand was smashed, and it appeared he fought back. There was a scratch mark on his face and a chunk of his ear was missing. Something really bad happened there. The killer or killers wrapped his body in plastic before dumping him. Antonio's mother described the moment she found him. I already knew when I opened the door and it was them that it was about my son. I could hear myself screaming when they told me. My neighbors on the other street heard me screaming. The sheriff gave his condolences, explained they couldn't identify him immediately and had to wait for the medical examiner. That was the only time Antonio's mother spoke to the sheriff's department. The state police took over, and when documentary crews asked Special Agent Kevin George about the case, he claimed he didn't have the family's permission to discuss it, which is false by the way. This case has so many red flags, it's insane. Here's what's crucial. Antonio Rich lived on Center Street at one point. His funeral was held at 106 Center Street, and he was Brandon Lee's cousin, the same Brandon Lee who would die the day after Sion's body was found. Starting to see the connections here? Antonio's mother is convinced it was someone he knew. I don't think it was a stranger to him, she said. In a small town where everyone knows everyone, where these young men were literally family, that narrows it down considerably, but also makes it that much more terrifying. Another detail about Antonio Rich's body being found is that he was shot in the abdomen and he was wrapped up in plastic. That just doesn't seem like a random act of violence. That seems like it was planned out. They took him out and then they wrapped his torso in plastic. Seems, I don't know, something about that just seems like somebody that knows what they're doing here. September 24th of 2023 in Victoria, Virginia, which is not far from Lunenburg County. A 911 call comes in reporting a self-unaliving. 25-year-old Carlton Craig was shot in the head, but when deputies arrive, they find 6 people in the apartment with Carlton's body. 6 potential witnesses. Carlton's family got a call at 5:30 that morning from a neighbor living below the apartment. According to what they heard, Carlton had been fighting in the parking lot. Did he run into the apartment for safety? Was he pursued? The details of this case are very suspicious because Carlton had just gotten his driver's license, but when he was found, his wallet was gone. His cell phone was gone. His pockets had been rifled through. His family tried tracking his phone through Find My iPhone, and nothing. Even more disturbing, Carlton's family found his hoodie at someone else's house, washed and soaking wet. The same hoodie he was wearing when he supposedly fired on himself. So if he shot himself in that hoodie, how did it end up at someone else's house cleaned and washed? One witness claimed to have told the apartment complex manager that someone was holding people hostage and had shot a young man. If someone's being held hostage and someone gets shot, why is it ruled a self-unaliving? Was it a fake hostage situation? And the reason why I ask is, you have several men dying under mysterious circumstances, a strange police officer. It just screams of a cover-up. I don't know what the business they're in or what kind of dealings they have, but I don't know, I feel like they have some kind of thing going on with the police. But I feel like the police are covering it up and I just don't know why, what's going on here. Did these men see something that they shouldn't have? Were they in business with these crooked cops? This one's really baffling to me, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section. But let's get back to the story. The scene also wasn't properly secured. Family members report people were walking in and out freely, contaminating potential evidence. The apartment wasn't taped off like a normal crime scene. Carlton's own brother had to clean his blood off the floor. The official ruling came quick, self-unaliving. Does that sound familiar? Case closed, body bagged, everyone back to normal. Carlton's brother doesn't accept it. I feel like it's not all put together. People that were in the apartment, people that he called that night, people that saw him the night before. I just want a little more than what I got right now, he would say. On April 16th, 2021, Kenyale Lee, cousin to both Brandon Lee and by extension Antonio Rich, comes to his grandmother's house with an unnamed girl. He changes his clothes, and then he leaves. And that's the last confirmed sighting of Kenyale. On April 24th, his brother's birthday, Kenyale never missed calling him. But this year, silence, nothing, no call from Kenyale. Now they really knew something was up. On April 28th, 12 days after he disappeared, came the strange ambulance incident. Someone calls 911 reporting Kenyale had a seizure in front of the Wedgwood Motel in Blackstone. But when the ambulance arrives, they're told he refused medical attention and he left. Nobody sees him again. And I don't know who that person was that called in the 911 report. His mother went to the motel with flyers. The staff claimed they'd never seen him. She plastered the flyers on every pole, every window that would let her, and nothing. Then comes the most chilling part, an officer. Now she doesn't name which one, but this officer comes to tell her that her son is deceased. But here's exactly what he said. I quote, "I can tell you that your son is dead, and there's 2 particular people in Lunenburg County that know what happened to your son. I will give you further details when I find out more." And that was more than 2 years ago. She never heard from that officer again. So what the heck is going on? The family has heard horrific rumors that he was put through a wood chipper, that his body was thrown in the creek between Blackstone and Kinbridge, that he was in someone's trailer, the kind that you haul on the back of trucks. But without a body, Kenyale's mother holds on to hope. "I will never accept it until I have proof that he's gone. I still look for him to come through that door," she said. Now with his next case, let's go back to 2021. July 2021, Arthur Banks Jr., stepson to his father, Willie Banks. The last day Willie saw Arthur, he was happier than he'd ever seen him. He was real excited, talking about fixing up the house where he lived. Arthur had a pattern. He loved walking through the woods on their family property, specifically the woods near Seaway, the same Seaway where Sion Carroll's body would be found over a year later. The Banks family owns about 80 acres there, property that's been in the family for generations. When Arthur went missing, his family called hunters from their church to help search. But the Moore family, the neighbors, they didn't wait. They walked through the woods and found Arthur hanging from a tree. The medical examiner ruled it a self-unaliving. The family never saw a police report, never got a full investigation. The state police and sheriff's department came out, but that was it. Arthur's father doesn't believe it was self-inflicted. The way things look, there's a possibility that somebody ended up doing it and set it up to make it look like it was self-inflicted, he said. And here's what hunts him. That happened over there, and they're going to bring them over on the same property. It looks like somebody's targeting this area. They're using it because they think they can get away with it. They're putting bodies in the same area on the same part of the land. There could be some connection there, he said. Now let's step back and look at what we have. Let's look at some of these patterns here. So we have 6 men, 3 confirmed deceased by violence, 1 ruled self-inflicted under suspicious circumstances, 1 allegedly self-inflicted after possibly witnessing something horrible, 1 missing, reportedly deceased. The family connections. So we got Brandon Lee, Antonio Rich, and Kenyale Lee, all cousins, a single family losing 3 young men. The geographic connections. Center Street runs through multiple cases. Seaway appears in 2 deaths over a year apart. The woods are where they're all found. The timeline. These deaths cluster between 2020 and 2023, with an escalation in 2022 through 2023. The investigation patterns. Cases bounce between jurisdictions, Kinbridge Police to State Police to nobody. Lunenburg County Sheriff's Department says it's State Police jurisdiction. State police say they need local cooperation. So it sounds like a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing, or they just do not want to investigate these cases, so they're all pointing the finger back and forth at each other. But overlooking it all, there's no 24-hour police coverage in Lunenburg County. From midnight to 8 a.m., there are no deputies on the road. They're on-call only, 8 hours every night where, as one candidate for sheriff put it, the county is unsafe. But let's go back to Chief Ben Barnes, because his behavior deserves some special scrutiny here. He's 26 years old, one of the youngest police chiefs in Virginia, takes over Kinbridge Police Department, which consists of himself and what's described as a handful of supporting officers. During Sion's case, he displays very weird behavior. He claims the SA offender isn't really an offender, has forced debris on him while claiming to search by car, suggests multiple times that the victim went into the woods to commit self-hurt, finds a dismembered body at 3:30 in the morning in the dark outside of his jurisdiction, and resigns weeks later without any explanation. And then also that SA offender is scrubbed from the registry, which I find that to be very, very odd. I feel like he is trying to cover this up or he's involved in some way. His explanation for finding Sion's body changed from a feeling or a hunch to an anonymous tip that he protected for security of the investigation, which does not make sense, especially when your other investigators do not know what you're doing, do not know of this anonymous tip. But here's what he never explained. How does an anonymous tip lead you to the exact spot of a shallow grave in the dark? Why search alone at 3:30 a.m.? Why outside your jurisdiction? You said you searched with police earlier that day in the broad daylight, but you came back at 3:30 in the morning? Doesn't add up. And why resign when the investigation heats up? Just red flags everywhere with this guy. But what do we know and what don't we know about this case? So here's what we know for certain. 6 men are dead or missing. Multiple cases were mishandled or under-investigated. Why? Family connections link multiple victims. I feel like there's something there. Geographic patterns center on specific areas. The police chief who found the most brutal victim resigned under suspicious circumstances. Federal authorities are now involved thanks to media pressure. But here's what we don't know. Why wasn't the SA offender's house searched when Sion's phone pinged there? Why were they protecting him? What did Brandon Lee know that might have gotten him killed? Who were the 2 people in Lunenburg County who allegedly know what happened to Kenyale? Why are all the bodies found in the woods? Is this the work of one person, multiple people, or is this a tragic series of coincidences? I don't think this is all a coincidence. While authorities bounce jurisdictions and close cases as self-deletes, the families keep fighting. Sion's mother wakes up every morning and tells her son's memory. Antonio's mother, Carlton's brother, and Kenyale's mother. The cruel irony is that these families came to a small town for safety. Sion was sent to Lunenburg to escape trouble in Richmond. These families had roots here going back generations. Center Street was described as a loving community where kids grew up together, where we're all family. Now, one resident says it's a ghost town. As I record this, all 6 cases remain unsolved. No arrests, no closure, no justice. The state police maintain active investigations and regularly appeal for information. They know people in Lunenburg have information. In a town this small, secrets don't stay hidden, they just stay unspoken. Special Agent Kevin George claims he's found no connection between the cases. But when you have 6 young men, many related by blood, all connected to the same small area, all meeting violent ends or mysterious disappearances within 3 years, that's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. Whether it's one predator, multiple killers, or a conspiracy of silence protecting someone powerful, something evil touched Lunenburg County between 2020 and 2023, and maybe it's still there. Somewhere in Lunenburg County, someone knows the truth, someone knows something, someone saw something, someone helped move a body, someone helped destroy evidence, or stay quiet.